Many things are revealed to us every day by research and studies that are related to the brain and its secrets. That is why we have the right to ask, as human beings who have the advantage of feeling happy and unhappy, what makes any of us happy? Why do different things make different people happy, and what is the meaning and purpose of happiness? Does it actually exist, or they are just illusions of human thinking? Here comes the Happy Brain book by Dean Burnett, to determine where happiness comes from within the brain. What are its causes, and what are the things that make our brains like certain things so strongly instead of others? These and other questions are the purpose of this book, and it is not as a self-help book, or a model of how to live a happier and more fulfilling life, or anything like that. The Happy Brain by Dean Burnett. We must understand that everything comes from the brain, everything we realize, remember, think about and imagine. This means that all forms of human life include the presence of the brain to some degree. Despite its small size, as some imagine, but it does a huge amount of work, and it consists of hundreds of different parts that in turn perform thousands of tasks over the course of the second, which gives us this full and detailed body that we take for granted. So undoubtedly the source of happiness is the brain. But what is the specific part in the brain through which happiness comes from? To answer this question, scientists and specialists confirm that dopamine is one of the prominent candidates for this role. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that performs a variety of functions within the brain, but the most common is its role in reward and pleasure. Bit to remember, human happiness is inside the brain, not outside. If happiness is not caused by chemicals, then where does it come from within the brain? Is there a specific area within the brain that works on producing happiness? An area that takes information from other parts about what we are going through, evaluates it and realizes that it should make us happy, so it makes us feel that desired emotional state? If the chemicals are the fuel, could this area be the engine? In fact, there are a number of studies and research in the areas responsible for this feeling. However, with all these considerations, it is clear that the search for happiness within someone's brain is very risky. That is why Dean Burnett, the one who has great experiments in the world of the brain and its secrets, confirmed that with all these obstacles, this can be done if we somehow had a subject who is completely familiar with the laboratory environment, or is not afraid because of the researchers and their strange tools, or has enough knowledge to be accurate in expressing his internal state, or he can do his own experiment and analyze his data by himself. We must not forget when we are talking about the brain that despite all the functions it performs, its development and its astonishing complexity, it remains an organ of the body. It is not only influenced by the things that come from the world around us, it also benefits from what happens inside our bodies, hormones, blood supply, oxygen levels, and countless aspects of human physiology. All of this affects the performance of the brain. To answer the question, what makes people happy? The media or some self-development books often publish stories about some equations and formulas that claim to be able to make people happy, or to seek happiness for them on specific days of the year, or to warn them about what can make them more frustrated, etc. This clearly leads us to the fact that the matter of happiness is very complex, and difficult to find, as the media and channels claim. Bit to remember, determining specific areas that are responsible for happiness is difficult, and the brain is affected by the outside world, and it also benefits from what is happening inside our bodies. We often spend half of our time at home, which gives an impression and makes us believe that staying in our home stimulates a response in our brains, so we feel happy. The same thing happens when we take the happiness chemicals, as our brains and nervous system stop responding to things, unless they are linked to biological causes. This means that we stop responding to things that have no biological consequences. For example, the issue of food. We need food, and we eat it more than one time during the day. But we don't get bored of the food. We may only get bored of some types of food, but the process of eating or consuming food is never boring. Each meal provides us with a sense of satisfaction, contentment, pleasure, and happiness when we are hungry. This thing happens because it is related to a biological need that our brains recognize as something we need to survive and reward us with satisfaction and happiness in return. Happiness is one of the most exciting things in our brains. One of the things that arouse in us this pleasurable feeling of pleasure and desire is the high expectation of reward in a new context. This clearly indicates that our brains find more pleasure in new things than in familiar things. So when we hear a funny joke for the second time, the feeling of pleasure is much less than the moment we heard it for the first time. This is an important indication that our brains are responding to the improvement in the positive stimuli that we feel. Studies show that if we have fewer dopamine receptors in the reward system, We will need greater stimuli in order to feel normal levels of pleasure, and we will seek excitement to the point that others will find it exaggerated. Bit to remember, the brain recognizes what we need to survive and rewards us with happiness, and our brains find more pleasure in new things than in familiar ones. We can define work simply as the energy and effort exerted to accomplish a task. There is no doubt that all the jobs and tasks that we do on a daily basis require us to exert energy and effort in some way, which may be physical or mental. But even on this simple level, work leaves a noticeable effect on the brain that may make us happy, and we feel a strange feeling while performing actions or tasks. A number of studies conducted in this regard indicate that the more physically active you are, the better your brain works. This means that the brain, as a biological organ, needs energy and nutrients, more than other organs. What happens here is that the increase in physical activity strengthens and improves the heart, reduces fat and cholesterol, and speeds up the metabolism process, all of which leads to an improvement in the supply of blood and nutrients to the brain, which enhances your ability to do something or do a certain task in reality. This clearly indicates that physical activity has a more direct effect on the brain, by increasing the production of nutritional factor in the brain and stimulating the growth and productivity of new brain cells. There is a factor that influences the feeling of happiness and people rarely pay attention to. It is the influence of other people on us, and that most of the time we are trying to gain their admiration. Here we ask the following questions: why are we looking for a good home? And a fortune? And becoming sports champions? There are many reasons, but the basis for all of them is the desire to be accepted, admired, and respected by others. Conversely, other people can become a major source of unhappiness, such as toxic relationships with coworkers, family problems, or a broken home. This situation indicates that when we are satisfied and happy, our brains place a great value to positive interactions and acceptance from other people. Bit to remember, the more physically active a person is, the better his brain works. Also, gaining the acceptance and admiration of others is one of the main motives to feel happy.